Afterwards, of course, the rest of the family wanted to know what had happened. "She'd flown up to the top of the Dutch barn, had she?" asked Abigail's father. "Yes." "And she's not been hurt at all?" asked her mother. "No." "What did she say when she came down?" asked Prudence. "Nothing, and she hasn't said a word since." "Why?" said Bob. "She'd had an awful fright." "Why?" "Because the fox came and took all our brothers and sisters." Bob's eyes opened wide. "Took them all?" said. "Yes." "Were they very messy?" "Oh, shush, Bob," said Prudence. "You silly little—" "Pooh," said her mother. "Tell us about these two chaps then, Abby," said her father. "The reporter and the rep. What happened when you found Polly?" "Well, they got angry," Abigail said. "With you?" "No, with each other. The reporter said to the salesman, 'You've brought me out here on a wild goose chase, you fool.'" "We haven't got any wild geese," Bob said. "And the salesman said, 'You want to watch your tongue.'" Bob stuck his out and watched it, staring down past his nose with crossed eyes. "And then," said Abigail, "the reporter said, 'Talking hen indeed. Why, it's nothing more than a cock and bull story.' And before Bob had time to question this, she went on. The salesman said, 'You're asking for a fat lip,' which made Bob pull up in his tongue and stick out his lower lip like a chimpanzee. "And then what happened?" the others said. "The man from the Echo jumped in his car and off he went, with the salesman running down the drive after him, shouting, 'Wait for me! Stop! Stop!' But he didn't." Everybody laughed except Bob, who was still making funny faces, and Abigail. "Cheer up, Abby," her mother said. "Polly's safe, and what's more, so is her secret." "But she can't say anything." "I expect she will, one of these days," Prudence said. "I'm sure Prue's right," her father said. "Polly's had a nasty shock that stopped her from talking. Maybe she'd start again if she got a nice surprise." A surprise was what Abigail got the very next morning. She'd gone to sleep at the end of the day, confident at least, that Polly was safe. In a paved yard at the back of the farmhouse, there was a big old Victorian dog kennel and run. A high wall bounded one side of the run, and the other three sides were of pointed upright iron bars, too tall and too closely set for any fox to leap over or squeeze through. For perhaps 100 years, no dog had been quartered there, but it had been used on occasion to house various sickly or orphaned animals that needed special attention. Now, at the farmer's suggestion, Pretty Polly was shut in there. And the next morning, a Sunday, when Abigail went to the dog run, she found her pet sitting, not inside the kennel, but outside, in a corner of the run among some weeds that had pushed up through the cracked concrete floor. Abigail opened the iron gate and went in. Crossing her fingers, she said, "What's your name?" The one trigger that had always brought a reply, but none came. Instead, Polly stood up, looking rather bemused. There, beneath her, brown and glistening, was her first egg. Abigail came in to breakfast carrying it, very carefully cupped in her hands. "That's a nice brown egg," said Prudence. "I like the brown ones best." "And me," said Bob. "You're not having this one," Abigail said. "Why not? It's Polly's." "It's just the same as any other egg, Abby," said her mother. "Put it in the tray in the larder." Her father came in, having finished the milking, in time to see Abigail clutching the egg to her chest and saying in a voice of horror, "Oh no, Mum, we can't eat this one." "Why not?" her father said. "It's Polly's." "Ah," said her father. "I thought she might be about on the point of lay. Her comb's a bit brighter red. But it's just the same as any other egg, Abby." "But it's Polly's baby." Her father smiled. "Well, not exactly," he said. "But you've given me an idea, Abby. Suppose Polly was able to pass on her talent for mimicry. Suppose one of her chicks inherited it. It's just possible. Now, if I were to buy you a mate for her, a smart-looking young cockerel, then maybe a few weeks later we could start collecting a clutch of her eggs. They'd be fertile by then, and they'd be a better size too. A pullet's first eggs are always on the small side, like this one. I'll see what I can find at the market next week if you like." "Oh, yes, please, Dad. But I still couldn't eat this egg." "Nor could I," said Prudence. "I could," said Bob. Each day that followed, Polly laid an egg in the dog run. Abigail resigned herself to the fact that they must be used, but gave up eating eggs in any shape or form. "Somehow I just don't fancy them any more, Polly," she said. "You understand that, don't you?" But there was no answer. Still, Polly made no sound of any kind. Her appetite was good and her behaviour normal. She came when she was called and allowed herself to be petted, and as usual she followed Abigail everywhere about the farm, though nothing would persuade her to go into the stable. But she was mute. Wednesday was market day, and Abigail arrived home from school very excited. Would her father have found any luck in finding a suitable mate for Polly? And if so, what would he look like? And what would Polly think of him? And would it be a nice enough surprise to start her talking again? Soon she knew the answers to all those questions. "Come and see what I've got you," her father said. And there, outside the dog run, was a chicken crate. The farmer opened the lid and took out the occupant. "What do you think of that?" he said. "Oh," said Abigail, "what a beauty!" And indeed, the new cockerel was a most attractive fellow, his glossy plumage a medley of red and black feathers, with touches of bright blue and of green. On his head he wore a neat pink comb like a cap, and his curving tail plumes, a mixture of black and olive green, were long and flowing. "What sort is he, Dad?" Abigail asked. "I don't think he's purebred," her father said, "but I reckon he's got a fair bit of Indian game blood in him. Look at those long, strong legs and his broad chest." He held the cockerel up, clamping its wings to his sides between his hands, and examined it with a stockman's eye. "Look at the meat on him," he said, imagining what a succession of plump Sunday dinners they would breed from this bird. Abigail looked, but her thoughts were not of broad breasts or juicy drumsticks, but only of Polly's reaction to this handsome gentleman. "What will she say?" she thought, and then, correcting herself, "if only she'll say something, anything." She looked at her pet standing silently in the dog run, waiting to be taken out for a walk, and remembered all the many words that Polly had been used to saying before the fox. "If only she'd make a noise, Dad, just to show that she still can." "Let's introduce them, shall we?" said her father. "Open the gate for me." When he was put down on the floor of the dog run, the cockerel stood for a moment as still as a statue, looking sideways out of one bright eye at Polly, who had retreated to a far corner. Next, he shook his head as though to clear it, scratched at the ground and ruffled up his feathers, and settled them again. Then he took several high mincing paces towards the black and silver hen to stand beside her, and, like some dandified gallant of old, making his bow before a fair lady, he bent his head and, trailing one outstretched wing in the dust, scuttered around her with quick small steps. As he did so, he gave a string of little hoarse gobbling cries that said, as plain as words, "You are without doubt the most beautiful hen in the whole wide world." Lastly, to complete this courtship dance, he stood up on tiptoe, stretching his bright neck to the heavens, and gave a loud ringing crow. Throughout the display, the watchers noticed Polly had stood silently, apparently unimpressed. But now, as the echoes of the clarion call died away, they saw her beak slowly open. Then, to their joy, pretty Polly once again found the power of speech, and what is more, it chanced that her choice of words was that. "How do you do?" she said.